So I believe we will start. And sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. This is all new to us. All right. I want to welcome everybody to this session today. I am Peter Baldaya, Director of Curatorial Affairs for the Huntsville Museum of Art. And I'm here today with my colleague, David Reyes, Curator of Exhibitions and Collections of the museum. We're pleased to host the museum's first virtual artist talk and studio visit in connection with our Red Clay Survey exhibition of contemporary Southern art. That exhibition is currently on view at the museum, and it will continue through October 4th, 2020. Our guest today is Alabama artist Gary Chapman. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us. The Red Clay Survey is a major exhibition that the museum puts on every 2 to 3 years. It is a juried exhibition, and we have been presenting it on a recurring basis since 1988. The competition provides a showcase for current art in our region through a critical selection of artwork from across the South and Southeast. This year's version of the show features 85 works by 67 artists, juried by myself and David Reyes from an initial field of nearly 1,250 entrants. We are extremely pleased with the result, and we hope that if you haven't done so already, you'll have an opportunity to come to the museum and see the show for yourself. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank the Kiltow Family Foundation for their lead sponsorship for the Red Clay Survey. I want to give additional thanks to the Alabama State Council of the Arts and the Huntsville Museum of Art Guild, as well as the many award sponsors for the exhibition. Now, during the course of this program, which we're hoping will last around 45 minutes, you can use the chat function on your screen to type in the questions as we proceed, because we're hoping to be able to get to some of those questions towards the end of the session. And now I'll hand the program over to David Reyes, who will introduce today's speaker, Gary Chapman.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Gary Chapman. Gary's a realist artist whose dramatic narrative paintings integrate past and present styles and subjects. Often blending the macabre and the beautiful in his works, he depicts active protagonists on quests of self-discovery. Gary received an MFA in painting and drawing in 1986 from Cranbrook Academy of Art in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and a BA in art and BS in industrial arts in 1984 from Berea College in Berea, Kentucky. He is professor of painting and drawing at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, where he's taught for 30 years. Gary has over 70 solo exhibitions and also has participated in numerous group and invitational exhibitions with regional, national, and international venues. Chapman was named a Joan Mitchell Call Legacy Artist in 2013 and has received numerous grants and fellowships, including a 1996 National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship in Painting from the Southern Arts Federation and 2 individual artist fellowships from the Alabama State Council on the Arts. His work has been reviewed extensively and is published in over 20 catalogs and books, including the 4 editions of New American Paintings. We are pleased to have with us today, Gary Chapman.
Thank you, David. David, I don't want to scare you, but can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Unfortunately, on my screen, I see nothing. All I see is, oh, there we go. We're back. Okay, do you want to share my, shall I share my screen?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead, Gary, and you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation for us, correct?
Yeah. I just want to thank Peter and David and Danny for setting this up. You know, it's every artist's dream to bring attention to their work, and this kind of attention is very much appreciated. I've been in Alabama for 30 years, and the Huntsville Museum, specifically Peter, has been very, very good to my work and very good to me, and I appreciate it very much. I'm very fortunate to have 2 pieces in the collection at the museum, and of course I have a piece on display right now with the Red Clay Survey. So I'd like to share my screen. And David, can I get a confirmation from you that you're seeing my full screen? And
All right, what I'm seeing right now is you.
oh no. Something happened when Peter and you guys, I lost the image and
here we go. Here we go. Try that, Gary. Try screen sharing now. Are you able to go to the bottom of the screen?
no.
Well, I can see, I've got a screen sharing here. Let me screen share myself and then I will get out of it really. Well, actually let me escape. Peter, can you like, do you know if you're screen sharing right now?
I do not think that I am. No, it doesn't look like I'm screen sharing. Let's see.
Wait a minute. I think we're about to have.
Oh, yes, we've got it. Yes, Gary.
Awesome.
Okay, there you
Thumbs
go.
up. All right.
I'm sorry for that. Okay, so my name is Gary Chapman. As David said, I've been painting for actually over 35 years. I've been at UAB for 30 years. And because I've been painting so long, I'm just gonna show you highlights of work over those 30 years and really hopefully get it to the more contemporary stuff very quickly. But when I talk about my work, I talk about it as an artist's journey or the search for meaning and truth. And I love to ask that question about, well, what does that mean? What is a realist and what is realism? I'm really not comfortable with those terms. I get coined a figurative painter. And in the art world, that often suggests it's somebody who can paint well, but doesn't really have anything to paint about. And I like to ask myself, well, then what is real? When I show students work, it's easy to point to the painting on the left and say that this is a classic example of realism. It is paint on a canvas that attempts to look like the elements they were observing, the A1 sauce bottle. And on the right is a clear-cut case of abstraction, merely red paint on the surface. I like to flip those terms, though, and suggest that, in fact, the painting on the left is much more abstract. The notion that it could reference something in our real world and appear to be that on a flat surface is really kind of an abstract idea. And the painting on the right is, in fact, incredibly realistic. It is nothing but what it proposes to be. It is red paint on the surface. It is real. It's not an illusion. And then I sort of flip that around and say, actually, neither of these are real. What you're looking at is light on a screen. You're not even looking at the actual paintings. So my talk is about an artist's journey, the search for meaning and truth, and what is real. I was studying in the late 70s and early 80s, and of course I was attracted to Caravaggio and the great narratives and the eroticism of the figure and the sort of symbolism of light and shadow. But I was also studying at a college where we talked about Kandinsky and the father of abstraction and these much more sort of spiritual ideas. The unfortunate thing was when I looked for art of my time, it seemed that it had gone bankrupt. Chuck Close had reduced figurative painting to this sort of mindless duplication of a photograph on a large scale. And Morris Louis had sort of drained all the spirit out of Kandinsky and mindlessly dripped paint on the canvas. You would think that would be a reason why I would stop painting, but in fact, I found it incredibly exciting that, that art is kind of bankrupt. Those two ideas about abstraction and realism are really kind of old school, and that really anything and everything can go on in the 20th and 21st century. This is the first painting I did after grad school, where I was trying to create this dialogue between abstraction and realism. I knew that although I'd gone through this very intense graduate experience working with many abstract painters, I knew nothing about abstraction. I could talk about it, but my hand knew nothing. So that summer I was teaching at Interlochen, and I launched into a series of 80 charcoal drawings that I drew at night. And it was just to explore mark making and what my mind knew, but my hand didn't. And the whole idea was to bring that back to my figurative painting at some point. Well, I had sort of leaped off this cliff from traditional, straightforward, realistic figurative painting, and now was working in black and white. So the second step back to my figurative painting was to keep it at black and white and add wax to my medium and build up this sort of clunky surface that kind of prevented me from making those perfectly smooth and defined figures. I wanted to see my paintings as a 21st century chiaroscuro, where the light had been turned up so far that the figure was burned away. It was a really experimental time for me. And so I was in Baltimore and I started piecing these things together, collaging and montaging, still working in black and white for about 5 years. And then I moved to Birmingham in 1990 to accept the position at UAB. This piece is owned by the Birmingham Museum of Art. And so it was when I became a professor and came back that I actually launched back into color. And I realized that it was perfectly healthy for me to be influenced by the great masters, that no matter what I did, I would bring the 21st century to it. And so I started these large altars. This is Mutter and Tochter, which is owned by the Montgomery Museum. And I was doing these large altars in large part sort of questioning, again, what is real, what is more tangible, the physical world or the spiritual world or the intellectual world. I did a whole series on anima. This is anima as electromotive forces. This idea that Carl Jung believed that every male artist had a female soul and every female had a masculine soul. And I was intrigued by anima, who would bring to me my ideas. Torso with stick, man with one wing. I started thinking romantically about the charcoal drawings, and I loved how they were so spontaneous, and I was missing that in my painting. And so I started a series called The Anatomy of Reality. I'm going to show you about 6 or 8 of these during the 90s. And I was purposely montaging and collaging elements together. I saw my paintings as an attempt to exhume truth, and I wanted to attack that subject with as many different visual processes as possible. So things are drawn, things are painted, things are printed, things are in a line drawing. There's some very abstract sort of splashy paint. And the idea was that if I attacked my figure from as many different vantage points and as many different visual vocabularies, that I might build a more articulate exploration into what it is that is real. I did a whole series on Judas, who I found a fascinating character. These are oil, and all these paintings are 4 feet, a little over 4 feet by 3 feet, and these are on silver leaf. This is 13 seeds. I was really happy with that work, but it also came across a little bit intellectual to me. It started coming across like smart art, which I'm very much, as an artist, against. And I want my art to exude authenticity and not look like a mathematical equation. It was only obvious that as I was working on these altars and the anatomy of reality at the same time, that they would start to fuse together. And so there were altars like this, Spike posing as Siddhartha, which has these elements that are sort of floating around in this sort of surreal sort of effect. This is Die Anatomie der Geschlechter, the anatomy of man and woman. And these are 2 more Judas paintings, the first kiss and the second kiss. It was only natural that if I was talking about reality, I wanted to get away from that heady smart art, and I wanted to see if I could go back to the straightforward figurative painting and not come across like just some figurative hack who didn't have any ideas. That's actually a Mondrian painting in the background, and that's an image of me. And I'm imagining this moment when Mondrian makes this radical departure from his traditional landscape painting into the paintings we know today, the squares and the grid. That idea of madness or genius. So I wanted my figures to sort of conjure up this moment. And so here's man with stick dancing, sort of conjuring up this sort of spiritual moment. The Wiregrass Museum owns that piece. There's a tandem piece here with woman with stick. And that led me to the incident series. There are 9 of these. The Huntsville Museum purchased this as part of Red Clay Survey years ago. I'm only showing you 1 of those. But then there were also 22 drawings. I started off with 5 figures, and I wanted them to be sort of laughing and yelling and screaming and sort of responding to this 5th figure. But I wanted the 5th figure to be sort of questionable. Are they responding to this activity, or are they above it? Are they oblivious to it? I decided to reduce just down to that 1 figure, that's all I really needed. I wanted to capture that moment where something was happening, but you, the viewer, had to question what it was. Was it something silly like they stubbed their toe? Was it something incredibly spiritual? Was it an apocalyptic moment? Was it the moment of death? Or was it the moment of the sexual climax? Or something silly like stubbing their toe? You know something's happening in that moment, but you're left to decide what it was. There were 22 of those drawings, and there are 9 of these paintings. I'm gonna kind of flip through these a little quickly. So I started going back to gold leaf, and I started painting on brass sheets as a test. And that moment got me thinking that something happened, and I realized all of my figures were looking for this moment of truth. And that's why they were called the Incident Series. I started a series of borrowed body parts and paintings of children, which sounds really funny, and I've got a statement that goes along with that really beautifully. But I saw adults in their search very different than the children in their search. The children in the search are sort of naive, and they believe that they can catch a fish with a stick and a string. And of course, we have all this baggage, and we believe that, you know, life is not that easy. And so in the borrowed body parts, it's the attempt of a man to look through the eyes of another, this white man who has a hard time understanding the Black experience, and here attempts to see through those eyes. Of course, that's sort of a band-aid, just not a real, it's sort of a ridiculous attempt, but it is an attempt not, anyway. And here's the affirmation. So the children are in the same world, often oblivious to their surroundings and their sort of utopian belief that everything is good. And yet we as an adult can look at this and feel a little bit ill at ease or uncomfortable with the very environment the child is in. This is Woman with New Voice. And so I'm trying to raise questions about society and the workplace. The idea of a woman in a male-dominated workforce feels this pressure to take on more masculine characteristics. What does that say about our society? And what does that say about this sort of futile attempt, this sort of surface band-aid that doesn't really address the problem at all? This is a man with black eye listening. The Mobile Museum purchased this piece. This is Man with New Voice listening. What does it say about a Black man who feels this pressure on society to speak more white and to listen? Has some sort of horrible connotations, and yet I think of my subject as somewhat innocent, that they're authentic in their attempt to discover truth, but often they get sidetracked and they have to get back on track again. There are many paintings of my daughter, Sadie. This is her as Salamandrina. And in almost every painting of Sadie, there is a salamander, which I can talk about symbolically later. Woman with New Voice. This is the Swimmer. Woman with New Arm. In some of the larger paintings, and this is about 5 feet across, I would leave parts of the painting undone, which is a sort of a Magritte reference to this is not a pipe. And that's my way of sort of diffusing the moment that, you know, yes, this is a Black woman with a white man's arm, but remember it's a painting. So what is that suggestion? What is the suggestion of the artist then? It sort of diffuses it, and we might really begin to talk about the symbolism of it. This is a painting I dedicated to my daughter. It's either Dada, which is this, if it's Dada, then it's the Dada movement, and nothing in this painting means anything, or it's Dada, the first thing that the first word that a child might say. And if you accept that it's Dada, then all the symbols in the painting spell out Sadie. There is the scissors, the arrow, the dove, the ivy, and Elijah, the tattoo. And I'm just asking herself to arm herself and prepare herself for life. This is a commissioned portrait, dual portrait. This is a thing I did for Sadie where I was trying to instill logic. Of course, she's 23 and that hasn't sunk in yet. And people even then told me that wait till she's 30. This is Girl with Puffin. Sometimes I like to just have fun. It's a commissioned piece for the Alabama Power Company. I started the helmet project in 2011, or finished the paintings in 2011, and they were these paintings of 12 figures with helmets. The helmets were designed to block their vision, and I wanted you to question who these people were. When I finished the paintings, I knew they couldn't just hang in a gallery. I wanted to do something special with them. And so here's my artist statement. At 8 a.m. on September 11th, it was easy to perceive our lives as serene. We were safe. And even while Bertie Madoff's crimes were being exposed, most saw our economy and our country as prosperous. We led the world. And while the scientific community embraces a vision of quantum mechanics and string theory, shattering our basic understanding of the observable universe, we are left blind, only capable of viewing Newton's world. We are blind. And so I imagine these 12 characters who, and to finish, we are a visually biased society living in a time in which we can no longer believe in what we see. So these fictitious people fashion these helmets because they're so tired of being duped by the digital world, by false media, by the sexy digital world that can be manipulated and edited, that they simply gave up on their vision and decided to look internally instead of externally. And like my figures, as I said, I think they start with this journey always with this authentic goal of finding truth, but they often find out that they get on this ridiculous path. And obviously, simply blocking your eyesight is not a way to find meaning. It is an interesting exercise, but we know these people sometime are going to have to take these helmets off and get back on track and figure out a better solution. So there are 12 of them. Each helmet is different. There are men and women, African Americans, Asian, children, boys and girls. And so it evolved into the Helmet Project, where I collaborated with photographers, and we took these paintings around and hung them in interesting and provocative locations. Really beautiful and wonderful locations, and really macabre and sort of downtrodden spaces. This is the Roundhouse. The only rule I said with the photographers was that they could never photograph real people in the space. I saw them like posters, like sentinels, warning the community, and either they've seen them and have gone somewhere else, or they've yet to arrive to get the message. This is an abandoned warehouse in downtown Birmingham. This is a corporate office in Birmingham. This is a beautiful graveyard north of Birmingham. This is out at Wade Sand and Gravel. This is a church in Montgomery. So I really want to fixate on my conversations pieces. This is a piece that I am so happy to have this piece at the Huntsville Museum of Art. And it starts my conversation series. There are 9 of these. I've been working on them since 2006. Each one probably takes somewhere between 2 and 3 years to complete. I call them my slow art because they evolve very slowly like a narrative. They come right out of my Anatomy of Reality series. And this is Life During Wartime. Many know that my daughter was born with a serious heart defect called left hypoplastic heart syndrome. And during her childhood, she had 2 open heart surgeries. And this is a conversation I'm having with her about her situation, that it's okay to cry. Her mother's also a breast cancer survivor. And so she has her little medals there. But I tell her at some point, you have to stand up, put your helmet on, and start the fight. This is a conversation I'm having with an African-American man about the state of relation. And that is Andreas Vesalius's the flayed man in the background. Each conversation starts with a large image throughout history that is meant to start the conversation. And you have to ask yourself, is this recreation or is this recreation, which has 2 startling different interpretations of what's happening in the painting. This is Re-Engage conversation. These are 84 inches tall by 64 inches wide, so they're really quite large. You'll see some here live in a minute. This is my sort of conversation about male sexuality and war. And this is Advice. Again, another conversation I'm having with my daughter about mixed messages in society and all the things that we heap onto women. This is a conversation, is To Be With You. That is Bartolomeo Manfredi's painting of the Cupid being chastised from the Art Institute of Chicago. A really profound painting, very, very moving for me early on in my early artist life. This is, oh my gosh, Leakun and his sons fighting off evil, and it's a conversation about fatherhood. This is the painting that hangs in the Red Clay Survey right now. I've yet to say the title out loud because I want you to decide how to determine, how to define that. And David may ask me questions about this painting a little bit later, but it starts with Robert Graham's sculpture of the female torso. There's a matching male torso in Los Angeles for the 1984 Olympic Games. She was rather scandalous because people thought he over-masculinized the woman, and Robert's famous for saying, have you ever seen a female volleyball player? This is my studio. There you get a sense of the conversations hanging there and the helmet project. So you can see the scale of those. Those quite some time ago, because if you look down there in the left-hand corner, you can see my dog Pickles. She has since passed. And there's a more current picture, and there's my new studio dog, Tyrion. And those 2 pieces you see hanging to the left are the monsters, and they are the 8th and 9th pieces in the conversation series. It's called The Monsters, He and She. Sadie went on to New York to study theater, and her heart began to fail, and she had to come home, and of course she had a heart transplant in 2015. That launched the 108 Black Paintings in the Coda project for me, and I'll show you a little bit about that. I'm an obsessive compulsive. I have to do something. From November to December, I cut 500 snowflakes. We were in the hospital. We lived in the hospital for months on end. So I started drawing, and I had the heart patients draw along with me. This is Jacob, who became a really great friend to Sadie and I, and Sadie's mother. He had his heart transplant 1 week before Sadie, and I can't tell you the bond those two people have. This is Kayla. She also had a heart transplant. She's drawing in some of these hearts and these collaboration heart drawings that we did while we were in the hospital. We had this beautiful little lobby off down at the end of the hall that with just the patients and their families could hang in. And so this is the first drawing. That's a left hypoplastic heart in the center. I can tell you more about these later if we want to. That is the heart that Sadie now shares, and it represents her and her donor. And that's Sadie and her hard exterior, the most stubborn person I ever met in my life, and that's probably why she's alive today. Sadie recovered well, went back to New York, and that's when I kind of fell into depression because it was finally resolved and I could kind of fall apart. I would go to my studio and I could not paint. I was just, I don't know, a kind of PTSD, a trauma. So I took a page out of the Materiality of Paint book, and I just decided to make paintings, mindless paintings. So I poured 108 paintings onto glass. The day Sadie was admitted into the hospital, was put on the medicine so that she could accept a heart, we waited 108 days in the hospital for her to finally identify the ideal donor heart. These are the crates the paintings sit in. And when I finally got back to the easel, I was able to do these two paintings, which is symbolic of Bernadette, myself, and Sadie, the three of us, these three seeds at the bottom, go through this horrific mess, and then we come out somehow whole. And two are the two seeds, both Sadie and her donor, that come out of it as one. Here are the 108 paintings, the only time they've been displayed outside, and that was in Gadsden at the Walnut Gallery. And these are my naughty altars. These are interesting. I spent over 6 years working on these, and I finally finished them last year. I can't show them to you. There are 9 of them. Here are 3. You can go to my website and see them, but they're really quite naughty when you open them up. And if you do go to look at them, I hope you'll read my artist statement, because my art is never meant to be about shock. And I put in context the importance of sexuality today, and I think maybe a little bit where we're off track. And clearly, I think we are off track. If you read my artist statement, that'll make sense. You saw behind me my Falling and Flying series, which is something I continue to work on. It's the firmament, falling, floating, and flying. And there's my website. And I am done. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Or do you want me to keep sharing my screen, David?
Well, actually, I think you need to stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Yep, and now you're back up center. So I think now, Peter, do you happen to have a question for Gary?
Well, I think, in the interest of time, I'd like to keep things moving forward a little bit. That was really interesting, Gary. I had never seen your very early works. And to see the whole arc of your work and how the threads kind of weave in and out is really fascinating. I'm very intrigued by your 2 newest works, your monsters, because they seem to depart a little bit. They seem a little bit more crystallized, a little bit more distilled. So maybe we can move into the studio and you can walk us through that, and maybe some of the things that you're thinking about beyond those 2 paintings.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and kind of a lead in there, I think I hear you saying that my work has changed a little bit, and that really got me thinking about how it might have changed. The only thing because I look back at my work and it all feels the same. Sometimes I feel like I'm just redoing the same old painting. But I think one thing that was really clear to me when I went back through it last night is that I've kind of dropped religion. I think early on I was working through those religious themes as a young man, struggling with religion myself or losing religion. And I just suddenly realized that I originally started that because I thought it was more universal. you know, it was sort of a universal narrative that we all knew, so it was sort of a beginning point. And of course, I quickly realized, oh, by the way, not everybody's Christian, and not everybody is even religious. And so I think for a young artist, I think that was kind of a healthy, safe area for me to kind of test and explore. But I think I've gotten away from that quite a bit. And so I'm more interested in characters like the monsters of Frankenstein. I'll get up and kind of walk over to see those.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We had planned this, so here they are. And just to give you a sense of scale, I'll kind of walk back here. I read the Frankenstein book. You saw earlier I had Frankenstein in one of the other conversation pieces, and I was actually in a show that had work about the Frankenstein. And that prompted this whole, and of course I had been doing the borrowed body parts. The monsters are in fact sort of an amalgam of multiple people. So I found them as really interesting subject matter. And of course with a daughter who's had a heart transplant. I love this quote that knowledge is knowing that Frankenstein is not the monster, but wisdom is knowing that he is. And if you read the Frankenstein book, you know, I think we all kind of dismiss it as a silly sort of film, but the book is just incredibly beautiful. It's a really moving thing. And when I see Boris Karloff come through that doorway in the original Frankenstein with his back to us, and he turns and he looks, and I just get goosebumps. And I think people were afraid of him, but for me, it's not fear at all. I see an absolute empty glass. I see not soulless, but I see a figure who's just a clean slate. And I just think it's beautiful. And if you rewatch it, I encourage you to think of it that way and not as this horrific monster. And sure enough, Frankenstein reveals the light to him. He innocently reaches for it. It's just beautiful. And I tried to capture that moment with Boris. I don't think I did so well, but it is that moment where you see his eyes and there's almost nothing there. And he is an amazingly articulate, beautiful, he becomes an amazingly articulate, beautiful man roaming the earth, a blot on the surface. And it's a beautiful book. So they start with Boris and Elsa Lanchester, who played the bride. They each have a salamander, which is the most complex living organism that can regenerate its own organs. And doctors are really interested in the salamander because they believe that through evolution, many of us had that ability, but that trigger was turned off. So there's a salamander representing bravery despite affliction. The meat locker handles, which I ordered, are a way to, let's do this. I think Peter liked the idea of. The meat locker handles are a way to kind of suggest, you know, storage of valuable organs. Of course, there's stitching running all the way up between the two panels. And then there are also these cleats or padlocks to sort of shut down or block. There's a parking meter in each one, and they function. So his has expired, but if you take out quarters from there, you can actually buy time in hers. So you just
Wow,
got 15 minutes of time there. Of course, the atlas is there, which is about responsibility and holding up the world. Each of them have a little medallion that says high voltage, being a little funny there, high voltage danger. On a more serious note, you know, there are these sort of animals that are inserted into it. The first heart transplant was a chimpanzee. And then there was this amazing little girl born in the 80s, baby Faye, who I remember distinctly. She had a baboon heart put into her and she lasted 2 weeks. Turns out she had the exact same heart syndrome as Sadie, the left heart syndrome. The pig is the most potential animal these days. We're actually using their valves, and there's some belief that they may be a secret to sort of developing a natural human heart, sharing DNA. I covered most of the things. Of course, there's 108 days in her, which is the 108 days that Sadie waited. Here's how I see my conversations. They're not meant to be linear and you come to a solution. They're meant to be an experience. One of my favorite things is on a Saturday morning when I wake up and I don't have to get up and I lay there and I fall into a dream and I wake back up and I fall back into the dream and things change. That's how I think of these. Elsa is Elsa. She's the monster. She is Sadie. She is my wife. She is every transplant recipient. Boris is Boris. He's the monster. He's Sadie's donor. He's me. He's, you know, they're anything and everything, and because it's not so simple. Wow, I talk a lot.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We want that. You know, Gary, I noticed you have a lot of text that's incorporated into your pieces, and the text for the she monster. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm so glad you pointed that out. There's so many things I want to talk about. It is actually a German palindrome, which means it says something one way and it says something different the other way. So in he, it says, in Girum imus, my German's horrible, in Girum imus Nacht, which means at night we dance in circles. And you turn that around and it says, et consum ir mir igni, which means at night we dance in circles, we are consumed by the fire.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when I saw that earlier, you know, I went out onto the web to see if I could decipher what this was, and yeah, I just love that. It really added so much to the work. You know, that was actually kind of fun for me to go and like do a little bit of researching to find out more about the piece. It really adds to it. So, oh, did we freeze up here for a second?
Yeah, I've used a lot of text. A lot of the text in the other conversation pieces come from influential music. So I've used the Talking Heads, I've used Peter Gabriel, I've used Einstürzende Neubauten, Kate Bush, because in the 80s, I was listening to really great music that was kind of edgy and crazy and very thought-provoking, and I wasn't looking at any good art. And so as an artist, as I was transitioning and becoming an artist, because I wasn't an artist originally, it was music that really drove me conceptually.
That's very cool. Very cool.
So it's kind of an homage to them, but it's also a way to use their lyrics again as that springboard into the larger conversation.
And Gary, what is behind those two paintings? In the center,
well,
there's a little something kind of showing through.
Yeah. So the conversation series is, I kind of think it's my major contribution, some of my best art. There are 9 of them, and that series is going to continue. And so behind it is Conversations number 10 that's already in progress. And right over there is Conversations number 11 that is just a blank slate. What is also different, Peter, about these 2 conversations is all the others are on wood, and these are actually on aluminum panel. So I have gessoed the aluminum, and then I pulled away, and you actually see aluminum exposed in places like blot is the raw aluminum showing.
And is that material that you've used to create the heads, is that charcoal or? It is charcoal. Okay, it looks like charcoal. I didn't know if it was paint meant to imitate charcoal.
No, it's charcoal. It's all been fixed. It's
okay.
Not gonna go anywhere. It's got a varnish coat.
Really going back to your use of charcoal that goes way back.
Yeah.
Nice, very nice.
Thank you.
Well, show us the rest of what you got going on in your studio.
Well, there is the Falling Flying series, which I'm embarrassed to say that I've been working on for a long time. I'm still picking at those, no hurry. I don't know, I'll get them done. This is the construction series. When I'm just looking for something mindless to do, I've been doing these large charcoal drawings. The naughty altars all hang up there.
Oh, they're very small.
They are. There is one large one. There's the larger one, and even it's not big. Yeah, they're very small. They're like 12 inches tall. They come from a trip I did to Spain and Art Nouveau and all that. This is my studio. There's my dog laying there on the couch. This is sort of like my seating area and my drafting table and kind of a big workbench here. We kind of work our way back here to, this is actually more of a workstation here. That's where all my tools are. And the garage door, which is a great asset for loading and unloading and whatnot. There's my motorcycle that I ride to school and back, and another workbench. And kind of full circle, that's my studio.
Well, it's fun to get the 3. It's fun to get the quick tour of the studio. As curators, Peter and I, we get a chance to come and see artists in their creative environment, and that's something that no matter how much we can show people in the galleries the wonderful work that comes out of an artist studio, it's always, I think, fun for us to see those spaces. It's great for us to be able to share that with this audience.
I tell you,
Peter, you had a question?
UAB has been very good to me, and this studio is funded by UAB.
So I have a question. Speaking of UAB, you've been teaching there now for 3 decades.
Yes.
How do you feel your teaching practice has influenced your studio practice and vice versa?
Tremendously. Tremendous. I cannot, yeah. I get on my soapbox with my students all the time and tell them, do you know how many people get an art degree and then they stop making art? And then, not that everybody should get a graduate degree, but do you know how many people go off and get an MFA and then stop making art? Not that a teaching job is the best job ever, but do you know how many professors stop making art? There's no perfect solution, and you've got to find what drives you to make your work, and you got to find a way that you can make it happen. Thank God I ended up at a research institution that supplies me with a studio like this. I would like to think that I would have kept on making art had I not, but I did. I got here at an early age. I became a professor at 29 and have been here for 30 years, and I've always had a studio. What I love about teaching is it keeps me engaged. And so I'm constantly telling my students, don't do that, and then I do it, and it's because I find the right way. Like somebody wants to paint their dog, and it's like, don't do a painting of your dog. And I've done a painting of my dog, and it came right out of that conversation. But my painting of my dog is not just a painting of a dog. In fact, it has a reverse God sees dog, and which is another sort of palindrome. And I don't want to get into that, but often I do the very thing I tell my students not to in an attempt to find the right way to do it. For example, my students want to put text in their work, but they often want to put text in their work to give you the answer. And it's like, no, if you're going to use text, let that further the provocation. Don't give us an answer, then you're cheating. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love the dialogue with my students. I have great students. Teaching is really critical in my life as an artist, and vice versa.
Great. Good deal. Well, Gary, we have a question from the audience. The question is, has Gary always been interested in science?
Science goes over my head. Although, I love Carl Sagan. I loved Carl Sagan. In fact, I actually have his daughter's book that I'm reading right now. I loved Carl Sagan because he could speak about really complex things in a way that I could understand them. I think Carl Sagan was a genius. And one of my favorite books still, and has been one of my favorite books for 15 years, is Art and Physics, Parallel Visions of Space, Time, and Light by Leonard Schlein. And it's a really fascinating book because he talks about how when you look back through time, he looks at the scientific world and the art world, and he mirrors exactly what's going on as he works through Dada, surrealism, cubism. And once he gets you believing that in order for the science world to make something or recognize something, you have to see it first. And artists are often just ahead of that, seeing this it's in the zeitgeist. And so then he starts to suggest that in fact the artists are doing it first. And science comes along and finds the solid, tangible existence of it. It's a great book.
Awesome. Thank you for answering the question.
Well, we're just about out of time. I want to thank you, Gary, so much. I have to tell you that when we were dreaming this up, that we were going to do this session in this series or launch a series, you were the first person that came to my mind because
you're going to make me cry.
Not only because of the complexity and the technical accomplishment of your work, but the way that you can enthusiastically articulate what it is that you're doing. And man, if I was a student, I would take your class in a heartbeat. So thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who signed up for this session today. Be sure to join us again. We've got another virtual studio tour and artist talk scheduled for September 25th, Friday, September 25th. And we will visit red clay artist Virginia Derryberry. Her studio is in Asheville, North Carolina. You can sign up for that session now by visiting the museum's website at www.hsvmuseum.org. We may sneak another studio visit in between Gary's and Virginia's, so stay tuned. Keep abreast of the museum's website news for that, because we're enjoying this, and it's great. I feel like David said, and there's Gary's book Conversation available now at your favorite bookstore or from Gary's website. Where are you selling that book, Gary?
We'll have to go to my website or go to my Facebook page. But I do have a one-man show coming up at the Gadsden Museum of Art, which this is in large part about. It has 4 different bodies of work in it. And anyway, you'll learn more. It'll be available in the next couple weeks. Thank you, Peter. Shameless plug.
Thank you. Also want to plug the Red Clay Survey, which Gary's work is in. You won't be able to miss it. It's pretty amazing. And the show is up until October 4th. It's a great time to come and see the museum. We are totally COVID safe. We have a lot of space in the museum, so it's a very great place to come. We've got a number of great exhibits up in addition to the Red Clay Survey, so come and see us. Again, the show will be up through October 4th. Again, thank you, Gary, and thank you, audience, for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.